Who is calling plays for the New England Patriots? Josh McDaniels has left and gone to become the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders, and that means we now have a former defensive coordinator, Matt Patricia, and a former special teams coordinator in Joe Judge sharing the play calling duties. This is not the recipe for success for a young quarterback like Mac Jones, especially when your offensive line is only getting worse and you don't have the greatest of playmakers around him. I'm starting to be concerned about the Patriots offense, and I'm concerned about what they could do this year. What are the expectations for the New England Patriots this upcoming season?
But now we go over to the New England Patriots, who also made the playoffs last year. Actually lost to the Bills in the wild card game. That's where, once again, Josh Allen, he was just on a hot streak, it seemed like. He absolutely torched that defense with J.C. Jackson. It was one of the better defenses in the league. But been a lot of turnover since the Tom Brady era, as the part of that train left a couple of years ago, and then it seems like more change is coming. A lot of people seem like to think it's for the worse. Obviously, like I mentioned, lost offensive coordinator Josh McDaniels, who's been a staple there for a long time. Guard Shaq Mason, whom they traded to the Buccaneers, which... Anyways, also lost guard Ted Karras, who's kind of a swing guy. He can play multiple positions. Running back James White, who's been their receiving back for I don't know how long, but he retired. And then defensively, like I mentioned, lost J.C. Jackson. Technically lost Stephon Gilmore. He was on their roster last year, at the beginning of the year at least. And then lost the linebacker Cal Van Noy. And those are the main losses. Brought in wide receiver Devontae Parker via trade. Running back Ty Montgomery, so maybe he's going to fill that wide receiver or receiving back role. Cornerback Terrence Mitchell, also brought in safety Jabril Peppers as well. And then draft-wise, got the highly scrutinized Cole Strange in the first round. Also in the second round, grabbed Tyquan Thornton, who's actually having a pretty good preseason before he got hurt. And then cornerback Marcus Jones in the third round. And then went and dived into another cornerback, Jack Jones, in the fourth round as well. And I forgot to mention, too, for the departures, they did finally cut ties with N'Keal Harry. They traded him in the preseason to the Bears. So, yeah, a lot of changeover for the New England Patriots. I'm sure you've heard, John, and we've all heard questions about their offense in general. So what are your thoughts and feelings on the Patriots?
I don't know how to feel. I never want to doubt Bill Belichick because he's the GOAT. He's the greatest coach of all time. And he deserves all the credit for any questionable decision. You just kind of roll with it because you know that there's some potential genius explanation behind it that we just don't know about yet. But we made a video when the draft finished up about the Patriots and their draft history and how Bill Belichick has not been the greatest at drafting over the last decade, at least in terms of using the early picks correctly. And so when they picked Cole Strange, I was incredibly confused. I don't necessarily have a problem with the selection of Cole Strange, but one of the skills in the draft that makes certain people really good at it, and this is in any draft, so it doesn't have to only apply to the real NFL draft. It can be even your fantasy football league at home, is the ability to play the board. So if somebody is a consensus third round pick and that person is not going to be picked until maybe at earliest the early second round, then you picking them in the first round is a massive reach when you could have gotten them later. Now, obviously, I believe in go get your guy, right? This happened with my Cowboys when they took Travis Frederick. He turned out to be the best center in the NFL, debatably for some time. So he was a stud and it worked out. But at the same time, if you can get that same guy in the second round, that means you can use your first round pick on somebody else who maybe won't be there by that pick. And I feel the exact same thing for Cole Strange. And there's no guarantees that it's going to work out like it worked out with Travis Frederick, because for the Cowboys, at least, they have a really solid track record of picking in the first round. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a Cowboys fan. You can look at all pros and Pro Bowlers they're getting in the first round. A majority of the time, their first round pick, they do good. The Patriots, their first round picks are often just questionable. And so I didn't think they had a great draft. Also, I felt like they reached a little bit on Tyquan Thornton. Now, he has had a camp where he's building a lot of hype and he had a really good first preseason game. But as a Baylor fan, I would say just maybe calm it down a little bit. Unfortunately for him, he's already kind of dealing with an injury, and so that might hamper what he could do in his rookie season. But I think that what I saw out of him at Baylor, he was still raw in a lot of areas, and he's incredibly fast, but he's got to work a lot more on his route running. He's got to work on his hands. There's just certain issues that I think are going to take time to develop. And once he starts facing the elite of the elites, even within his own division, right, like with Tre'Davious White or Xavier Howard or Byron Jones, the top tier guys, he's not necessarily proven yet, but Sauce Gardner, who had an amazing preseason, didn't even allow a catch, wasn't even targeted once. That's a joke for everyone. He didn't play a lot. Anyway, so yeah. So anyway, I would say calm it down a little bit on Tyquan Thornton hype, because I do think he could eventually be a really good receiver because he has a lot of the physical tools. It's just he's got to develop. And so don't sell yourself, Patriots fans, on he's going to be the offensive savior. And I say that because I am worried about the Patriots offense. I think Mac Jones is a good quarterback, but I do think that what we saw out of him last year was Josh McDaniels knowing, hey, I got to protect my rookie. I'm not going to put him in terrible situations. And we see that with every rookie quarterback for the most part. I remember with the Cowboys, because I'm a Cowboys fan, Dak Prescott was very similar. His rookie season, they just played within his strengths. They didn't open up the full playbook because they didn't want to put him in situations that would allow him to make poor decisions or bad throws or things that could hurt his confidence or whatever. And so they played within the things that he was confident in, the things that he was capable of doing. And that also gives them the best chance to win. And I think that was the same thing that happened last year with the Patriots. And now Josh McDaniels is gone. And we don't know who the offensive coordinator is. Patricia started out as an offensive guy a really long time ago, and then he eventually transitioned over to defense, and he's been there for most of his professional career. And now all of a sudden he's going to be calling offensive plays. And then there's Joe Judge, who he was always a special teams guy, and then he became a head coach. Didn't work out. Now he's going to be also mixing in there. I'm just not sure what's going to happen with the offensive play calling. And honestly, I would not be shocked if at some point we see Bill Belichick just take the reins and say, Patricia, just go back to defense. I'll call the plays on offense. And I don't know if that's ever happened in Bill Belichick's time as a head coach. And he's a defensive guy too. So I'm kind of worried about what we're seeing out of this offense. I think they're lacking just overall weapons for Mac Jones. Like, they have solid players. They have a lot of B minus players, but they don't have like that one A plus, A minus kind of guy that like Stephon Diggs, or with the Dolphins, Tyreek Hill. Like, they don't have any of those guys. Like, okay, that guy, I can rely on him all the time. He's going to take pressure off the quarterback. He's going to put a lot of pressure on the defense every single game. He's going to make plays. I know who he is. They don't have anybody like that. And for all of Brady's career, for the most part, they did. And usually those guys sometimes are people that you wouldn't expect them to be, like a Julian Edelman or a Wes Welker. So it could have been a mix of the scheme and Josh McDaniels. And once again, that just lends to the point that, like, I'm not sure that with Josh McDaniels gone, that they're going to be able to elevate some of those guys like he was able to in the offense that they had for such a long time. So I'm a bit worried about the Patriots. I don't think schematically anything's really going to change, because it's obviously still Bill Belichick, and I think that they're going to run the same offense, but I just don't know how effective they're going to be with the lack of weapons, like I said, at that high tier level. I think their offensive line has also just progressively gotten worse, but the Patriots also are just really good at developing offensive line, so we'll see. But I don't know. I have concerns about the Patriots. They're losing key players like James White, who have just been staples in the offense, and so we'll see. They're going to have to be young guys like Ramondre Stevenson, who are going to have to step up. Jacoby Myers on offensive receiver, different players like that. They're going to have to become bigger factors within the offense, and just keep your eye out on who's calling the plays, because that still confuses me.
Matt Patricia, it's like split between Matt Patricia and Joe Judge. They've been like sharing the duties. Yeah, I think it's just. So I do have basically very similar. I mean, same concerns you have in regards to their offense. Mainly just the scheme, just the scheme changing, because and it's important to remember they had Tom Brady and Josh McDaniels, and then Brady leaves. Like, okay, even though Brady knew, it was a Rolodex, had an encyclopedia basically of all the plays and what to do. You still got Josh. Okay. And then, Mac Jones, obviously we knew that he was pro ready, and he looked pro ready mentally and physically. But then now you lose Josh McDaniels, and you're asking Mac Jones to change into a new offense, and you really don't know what that offense is. And yeah, like you already alluded to, I don't have a lot of confidence, especially regarding the preseason. I know I'm not looking at really the score and stuff as much. I'm just looking at just like rhythm and flow, and like, are they tying, which also it's important to factor maybe that they're holding plays back, concepts back. That may be a thing. Um, but I mean, offensive line you mentioned has been struggling. I mean, apparently they've kind of changed up how their blocking scheme is going to be too. Like, I know they were more like a man to man run blocking scheme, kind of old school. But now they're switching back to more teams are running like a zone blocking scheme. So, and then you already mentioned there's no wide receiver that scares you. No wide receiver that a defensive coordinator is going to say we have to double this guy 90% of the time, or third downs we have to double this guy. No game breaker per se on offense. So, yeah, I'm not going to reiterate everything you said because you already made a great point in regards to the concerns on their offense. We'll have to see. I think that's probably why they grabbed Tyquan Thornton. He was looking really good in the preseason, not just as a deep threat, I felt, but also had some crisp routes and such as well. But yeah, I had concerns in preseason. Just sometimes it seemed like and I've heard from other podcasts, people that really watch and break it down know the scheme and such. They say that they're not the rules that they used to teach that for the wide receivers that were just concrete basic good rules. They don't have the same insight and coaching that Josh McDaniels does. Like, hey, if you see the the safety or cornerback do this, do that instead, because they do like to run a lot of option routes in New England. It's kind of so it relies a lot on that. In regards to the defense, I think their defense will take a bit of a step back. Obviously, you lose J.C. Jackson, and Stephon Gilmore, definitely 2 top 10 corners, at least as of last year. JC's we both had definitely in the top. I think we both had him he's definitely in our both top 3, top 5. And I liked Marcus Jones, but he's going to be more of a nickel/slot guy. He's not the biggest of defensive backs. They still have Jonathan Jones. They have a lot of Joneses at cornerback. So maybe that's the thing that Bill's going for. All these Joneses, you don't know if you're not careful, you don't know which Jones you're lining up against, even though you're looking at the front of them, which wouldn't matter. Yeah, I have faith in that their defense will be solid. It's just like you mentioned, like, can their offense do enough to win them games? And I'm not fully confident in that. Doesn't help that their division, like we mentioned, Buffalo, powerhouse, and then you're going to have to put up points to keep up with them. We'll see if Miami can also be an offensive juggernaut at the very least, though, and we'll talk about them in a second. They're going to be a pain in the butt as well. So yeah, it's a shame too, because I think general media is already kind of blasting Bill Belichick. But once again, just to go back to my original point, like any good head coach, especially in the NFL, when your coordinators that you've had for so long that have been a part of just a staple of your team, they start moving on to the job. It's not always easy to get someone else and plug them in and they'll do the exact same thing or better. Oftentimes, like we're kind of seeing, it's not the same / the worst, or you have to move a Matt Patricia, who's a defensive minded guy, to offense. And it's, yeah, like we're already kind of alluding to that we both have concerns in regards to that. So we'll see if maybe they just have been kind of, bluffing us, and they've just kind of meant to sleepwalk on offense, and if they have more confidence coming in the season, but doesn't really look like that as right now. So that is the New England Patriots. We'll see if they can return to the playoffs.